Hi everyone, welcome to part one of We Culture. That's our subject, We Culture in Korea. And as we mentioned We Culture a little before in the course, from now we will dive deep into We Culture and what does it mean. And today we will discuss about what is the meaning of we when we are talking about Korean culture. So let's see what it's all about. So the first thing that I would like to share with you is the word for we, and it's pronounced 우리. And you can encounter this word a lot not only in everyday life, business life, but also a lot in marketing and branding and commercials. So it's very used word in Korean. The feeling of we, or the cultural concept of we, has started early on in Korean history, and it goes through all the way till these days, and this is why it's such a strong force in society. So Korean society is very homogeneous, and not only these days as a country it considered quite homogeneous, but also from history. And Koreans are very proud in their history and the fact that they are very ancient society and they've been around for a long time, and still they kept very homogeneous. So this is a source of pride, and this is something that contributes to the we feeling. And again, we meet Confucianism as well, which put emphasis on relationships. And where there are relationships, there is collective. And where there is collective, it forms or it supports the feeling of we, because the focus is not on the individual. And the focus of the culture itself is not on the I, it's on the we. In Joseon Dynasty, which is the longest ruling dynasty in Korea, there were times of isolation to the world and not being so open to other countries. At that time, of course, there was trade and influence from neighboring countries, but as general, in Joseon Dynasty, Korea was relatively isolated. Another important reason is the recovery from Korean War and topping as a global economy and leading economy. And Koreans give the credit to a country teamwork and people making sacrifices for the country and people working as a team to recover from the war and to establish a strong economy. So the focus on the we culture is maintained throughout history until these modern days. And the we feeling is really one of the major pillars in Korean society. So how can we see that in everyday life? Actually, as I mentioned, a lot of the times we, or this kind of concept or this kind of culture, is literally everywhere. But there is a couple of things that I want to focus on. First is the communication. A lot of the times Korean will use the word we instead of me, or ours instead of mine. For example, they will say our country and not my country. They will say our mother and not my mother. Even our husband. When an individual speak, they are saying, but choosing the word we or our is to include whoever we are talking with. Another way we can see it in the culture is when we're creating common ground with somebody. So throughout this course, we see that relationship is very important. And part of that is that kind of we feeling. We have something in common. And if you remember when we were talking about basic manners, and part of making a conversation is to ask a lot of questions and personal questions, is just to make that we feeling, just to catch something that is in common so we can establish trust and then respect, and then it will go to long-term relationship. So even in communication part or when we are greeting, it is all connected to one another. Another phenomenon that we can see is the need to group. And again, this is in order to find a mutual we. And a grouping can be based literally on everything. So if we take it to the workplace, so for example, in Korean companies, there is a practice of activity clubs just to make groups and to create this kind of feeling between employees. So we can have movie club or sports club, book club, Everything that the employees have some interest, personal interest in, can become a club, and the company support this club and provide funding for employees to participate in those clubs. So this kind of practice is a very good example for grouping even within the business environment and even when working. This is it for today, the end of part 1, and we will continue to discuss about the we culture in part 2.